Millennium, CNN's groundbreaking television series, chronicles 1,000 years of history. And now you can be a part of it online at cnn.com/1000. Journey back and witness great conquests, achievements, and discoveries. Plot and navigate your way through time to the places, people, and events that have shaped our world. Plus, test your knowledge with our interactive games. More of Millennium, only at cnn.com/1000.
We know the history of our own country best. Millennium tells of other histories, of peoples who in the last 1,000 years influenced those around them. It tells how ideas were communicated from one culture to another, how the world was changed by exploration, by inventions, by empires, and by trade. This is history from a global perspective, not through the eyes of the West. Here we meet peoples little known outside their own countries. A 1,000 years ago, the cultures of this planet were separated by distance and ignorance. Few knew what lay beyond their own borders. How these separate worlds became one world is our story. In the 11th century, the century of the sword, China's inventiveness surpasses all others. Islam spreads wealth and faith and learning. India's influence declines. Her civilization turns inward. At the court of Japan, the first novels describe lives as modern as our own. In the West, Christendom divides and confronts demons. 1,000 years of history. Millennium. At the start of this millennium, each civilization had its own way of imagining the world. To Christians, the world looked like this, with Europe at the bottom left. For Muslims, Europe shrinks, dwarfed by Asia. For the Chinese, the world was China. 1,000 years ago, roads from the west to China crossed the terrible Taklamakan Desert. Its name meant, "He who enters will never return." Along its edges, the Silk Roads carried merchants from India and the Middle East. Their saddlebags bulged with spices, jewels, carpets, and silk. The gateway to China was the oasis of Dunhuang. Here, hollowed into the desert cliffs, was a Buddhist monastery. Recesses in the rocks hid fabulous treasures, donated by passing merchants. Each of the 450 caves was a shrine, decorated by monks. On the ceilings and walls, they painted the world of China. It was a land of mountains and cities, singers and devils. The poet Su Xia described this country of extremes.
The river flows to the east. Waves have washed away all the heroes of history. To the west of the ancient wall, the jagged peaks pierce the heavens.
The Chinese regarded their land as the central country of the world. They believed their emperor held a mandate from heaven to rule all the peoples of the earth. China's vast distances were conquered by technology. The Grand Canal linked its 5 great rivers into one navigable waterway, 1,500 miles long. Today it is still China's vital artery. It led to the bustling capital of the Chinese emperors. In the 11th century, the city of Kaifeng. To feed its million people, the markets were open 24 hours a day. The world's oldest reputed restaurant, Ma Yujing's Bucket Chicken House, plied its business. This contemporary scroll captured the street life of the day. Kaifeng was a gastronomic center. Here fish was a delicacy. It was caught by cormorants.
They tie a cord around the bird's neck so that a small fish just passes through his throat. But he cannot swallow a big fish. The birds are very tame and attend to everything as if they had a human heart.
With duck and ginger, the fish made dumplings invented by Kaifeng's palace cooks, still enjoyed today as dim sum. Most remarkable of all, The people of Kaifeng already used inventions most of the rest of the world still waited for. They had printing, paper money, the compass, an earthquake detector, a clock driven by water, acupuncture, and gunpowder. The Chinese had kites which carried people. They used them to pioneer their dreams of flight. They used them to make music and to measure distances. Even the emperor designed kites. This vast empire was schooled and united by the ancient philosophy of one man, Confucius.
Let the ruler rule as he should, and the minister be minister as he should. Let the father act as a father should, and the son as a son should.
1,500 years earlier, Confucius had traveled across China preaching self-restraint and obedience to the ruler. Now, in the 11th century, political reformers used his doctrines to strengthen the empire. For this ordered world was under threat. Invaders from the northern desert coveted China's good earth. Kaifeng was sacked. China was split by the sword. Despite the chaos, Confucian scholars remained confident that China would endure.
Civilization will always win its encounters with savagery. The barbarian will be subjected by kindness when he cannot be won by war.
In the end, China always captivated her conquerors and turned them into Chinese. In the 11th century, a young and vigorous civilization was growing. Its power stretched from the deserts of Africa to the shores of the East. Islam.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Starting from its cradle in Arabia, Islam spread from India to Spain. Across 4,000 miles, Muslim travelers passed through a single world, united by mosques and the call to prayer. Muslim manpower was renewed by nomadic tribes of the Sahara and Central Asia. Their cavalry became the vanguard of holy war. Where the sword went, trade followed. Islam taught that to barter is to be pious. A merchant told of his ambitions.
I want to send Persian saffron to China, where I hear that it fetches a high price, and then ship Chinese porcelain to Greece, Greek brocade to India, Indian iron to Aleppo, Aleppo glass to the Yemen, and Yemeni striped material to Persia.
Muslim merchants were the world's middlemen. Every deal was a chance to exchange ideas. Muslims saw Islam as a garden in the desert. Its towns and cities were oases. The western jewel of the Islamic world was also the largest city in Europe, Cordoba, in southern Spain. At the heart of the city was the Mezquita, the great mosque. Muslim writers lavished praise upon Cordoba. One counted 80,000 market stalls, 900 bathhouses, and over 1,000 mosques.
Cordoba has no equal in North Africa, and hardly any in Egypt, Syria, or Mesopotamia, for the size of its population, the cleanliness of its streets, its mosques, and the number of its caravanserais.
Cordoba grew rich from metalwork and was famous for its weavers.
They make various textiles, the loveliest that can be imagined. They dye leathers from North Africa, excellent and costly. No specialist anywhere else in the world can equal them.
But it was as a centre of learning that Cordoba was most famed. Just one of Cordoba's many libraries housed 400,000 volumes. Here, in Islamic Spain, the legacy of knowledge from Greece and Rome was saved, copied, and cherished. Outside the city walls was the Caliph's palace, the Medinat al-Zahra. We know how it once looked. Here the Caliph was served by 3,000 slaves and a harem of twice as many women. Al-Zahra's ponds were so big, we're told, it needed thousands of loaves of bread a day to feed the fish. Chief among its marvels was the sitting room of the Caliph.
The roof was in gold tile and translucent blocks of alabaster. Whenever light entered this room, and the caliph wished to astonish his courtiers, he had only to make a sign, and Mercury in the center of the room would move. The room itself seemed to turn, frightening the assembly.
For Muslims, a garden was a mirror of paradise. In every corner of the palace, the sound of running water could be heard. And water helped drive an agricultural revolution across the Islamic world. "5,000 water wheels lined the banks of Cordoba's river, the Guadalquivir, grinding corn for the city's workers, irrigating the land. The fertile land nurtured warriors who would drive Islam's frontiers deeper into Africa, Europe, and beyond. At the start of the 11th century, India's culture outshone her neighbors. The birthplace of two great religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, India led much of the rest of Asia in knowledge, religious and secular. The Muslim scholar, Al-Biruni, visited India to learn the secrets of her wisdom. In the ancient city of Benares, he studied their rites of death and their river of life.
The Hindus believe that in ancient times the Ganges flowed into paradise. Into this river they throw the burned bones of their dead, so that nothing remains of them, and every defilement, dirt and smell is annihilated at once, so as scarcely to leave any trace behind. To Hindus, the fire eats everything.
Al-Biruni spent 13 years traveling in India. He described a culture that challenged his own ideas.
India is full of riches, entirely beautiful and delightful. I shall now speak of certain strange manners of the Hindus. They differ from us in every respect.
Al-Biruni went beyond India's thriving cities to discover how they were sustained. In the fertile countryside, he found a familiar way of life, but was surprised by temples that were new. These buildings embodied the wealth and power of the kings that endowed them. At Khajuraho, they founded a city of 85 temples. 20 remain. The temple's structure reflects the Hindu view of life. Hindus believe each person has many incarnations on earth. Each layer of the building represents a stage in the ascent towards perfection. Here, these erotic sculptures celebrate the marriage of the god Shiva and the goddess Parvati. They made love to each other for 1,000 years. Their divine union perpetuated the universe. Al-Biruni noted that the temples were depositories of vast wealth and centers of pilgrimage. He was fascinated by the Hindu holy men and their customs.
These men dwell outside civilization. They do not shelter under a roof. They let their hair grow long. They wear no dress.
Here at the junction of two sacred rivers, millions of pilgrims still bathe. Determined to understand this exotic world, Al-Biruni learned Sanskrit. He read the Hindu sacred books which they so valued. The Ramayana, a collection of Hindu myths, is now a television soap opera.
At first, I stood to them as a pupil to his master. Now I can only compare their learning to a mixture of pearls and dung.
Al-Biruni was disappointed. He thought India had lost interest in the rest of the world.
The Hindus believe that there is no country but theirs, no religion like theirs, and no science like theirs. If they travelled and mixed with other nations, they would soon change their mind.
India's era of influence in world history seemed, to Al-Biruni, to be over.
A stormy wind. At dawn, when one is lying in bed with the lattices and panel doors wide open, the wind suddenly blows into the room and stings one's face. Most delightful.
Sei Shonagon lived in Japan 1,000 years ago at the Heian court. For 10 years, she was lady-in-waiting to the empress. She recorded this intimate world in her pillow book.
When I make myself imagine what it is like to be one of those women who live at home, faithfully serving their husbands, women who have not a single exciting prospect in life, yet who believe they are perfectly happy, I am filled with scorn. I wish they could live for a while in our society, so they might come to know what delights it has to offer.
Sei Shonagon's pillow book is filled with the spice and gossip of the court, a portrait in miniature of a rarefied society
One has gone to bed and is about to doze off when a mosquito appears, announcing himself in a reedy voice. One can actually feel the wind made by his wings, and slight though it is, one finds it hateful in the extreme. A man with whom one is having an affair keeps singing the praises of a woman he used to know. Even if it is a thing of the past, this can be very annoying. How much more so if he is still seeing the woman. Yet, sometimes I find that it is not as unpleasant as all that. Things that make one's heart beat faster. To sleep in a room where some fine incense is being burnt. Embarrassing things. Lying awake at night, one says something to one's companion, who simply goes on sleeping. Adorable things. A new metal bowl. Anything indigo. Duck eggs. Squalid things. The inside of a cat's ear. A swarm of mice who still have no fur when they come wriggling out of their nest.
Inside the palace, time ran on a different clock. Many official engagements took place in the middle of the night. Ladies would spend all day confined to their rooms. The only men to see them were their fathers, husbands, and lovers. Court women rarely ventured beyond the confines of the palace. In the formal gardens, nature too was controlled. The court affected contempt for the empire which paid for their luxuries. Of the world outside, they knew little and cared less. Sei Shonagon enjoyed poetry, calligraphy, gossip, and men. Makeup imitated the emperor's bad teeth. Fashion dictated layer upon layer, artfully arranged. It was normal for unattached women like Sei Shonagon to take many lovers. Neither party expected anything more than physical pleasure. Each night, the men of the court visited and left before dawn.
I rather enjoy all this. Throughout the night, one hears the sound of footsteps in the corridor outside. Every now and then, the sound will stop. It is pleasant to think that the woman inside can instantly recognize her visitor. The man finally gives up, thinking that she must be asleep. But this does not please the woman, who makes a few cautious movements with the rustle of silk clothes, so that her visitor will know she is really there. Annoying things. A woman is angry with her lover about some trifle and refuses to continue lying next to him. Full of resentment, he buries himself under his bedclothes and settles down for the night. It is cold. As the night wears on, she lies on her side of the bed, feeling very annoyed that the quarrel didn't take place earlier in the evening when it would have been easy to leave. Then she begins to hear strange sounds outside. Whereupon he annoys her further by pretending to be asleep. Indeed, one's attachment to a man depends largely on the elegance of his leave-taking. A good lover will behave as elegantly at dawn as at any other time.
The secluded world Say Shonagon recorded did not last. What did last is her pillow book, now an international bestseller, which has kept her memory alive. The edge of Europe, the edge of the world. The year 1000 held terror for Christians.
Perilous times were at hand for men's souls. When the millennium approached, almost the whole world suffered the loss of great men, noble laymen, and clerics.
(1033) was the 1000th anniversary of Christ's crucifixion. From across Europe, pilgrims came to Jerusalem seeking salvation. Then as now, this was the holy city of the peoples of the book. Muslims shared it with Jews. Christians claimed it also.
At this time, an innumerable multitude of people from the whole world, greater than any man before could have hoped to see, began to travel to the sepulchre of the Saviour at Jerusalem. Many wished to die there. When some consulted the more watchful of the age as to what was meant by so many people, in numbers unheard of in earlier ages, going to Jerusalem, some replied, cautiously enough, that it could portend nothing other than the advent of the accursed Antichrist, who, according to divine testimony, is expected to appear at the end of the world.
But the world did not end. When the pilgrims reached Jerusalem, they found Christianity divided. Rival traditions from all over Christendom worshipped in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. A 1,000 years later, they still worship here, but every column and candle is jealously fought over. They do not even trust each other to hold the keys to the door. For 800 years, the same two Muslim families have held them, locking it each evening and opening it the following day. In the 11th century, Christianity was divided into two rival camps. The Western Catholic Church looked to Rome, the Eastern Orthodox Church to Constantinople. Hagia Sophia was the headquarters of the Eastern Church. It was rich, cultured, and urbane. The Western Church was jealous of its wealth and held its priests in contempt.
These soft, effeminate men with large sleeves, who wear tiaras and turbans, who are liars, eunuchs and lazybones. They go about clad in purple.
In Western Christendom, churchmen considered themselves the true custodians of the doctrine of Christ, handed down in Rome. In 1054, years of political wrangling reached a climax. The Pope issued a bull excommunicating the Eastern Church. The split confirmed a deep cultural divide. The West had many great centers of learning, but much of Europe was still covered by forest, deep and uncharted. Here, Christians felt isolated, as the Pope acknowledged.
Of Europe, the last region of the world, we Christians inhabit only a small part. For who will give the name of Christians to barbarians who live like whales on the icy ocean?
On the northern fringes, Christians eked out a living. Beyond their settlements, the unknown began. Wolves and brigands lurked in the depths. Christ was one God amongst many. Pagan beliefs lived on. The gods of the trees turned women into werewolves. Babies were sacrificed at their altars. Here, Christ was not a distant figure, but a warrior knight who fought pagan evil. One by one, the northern kings converted to Christianity, banishing their old gods to the forest. The need to escape this environment gave Christendom dynamism. In the next 100 years, the wilderness would be tamed, and forests would give way to cathedrals.